Finish what you start. Finish what you start. Every endeavor, every undertaking that we or any person takes involves a start and a finish. Finish what you start.
Again, here in the neighborhood, we're kicking things off with Finish What You Start. As you know, if you're new to the neighborhood, this is pretty much something that we do on a yearly basis. We have different series throughout the podcast season. And this series definitely is one that's dear to my heart because it's something that my father, as a preacher, he used to do a sermon on this particular topic. And we wanted to make it something that would be a foundation, a mantra here in Happy Hood. So this season, we're going to talk to some wonderful, amazing individuals that's going to provide some how-tos, as well as just provide their overall experience as relates to finishing what you start and living a purpose lifestyle. So again, I want to thank you. And we have an awesome guest today. He is a public speaking coach. He focused on ambitions, or I should say he focused on executives as well as other coaches that have a high ambitions to be a top 1% communicator in their industry. He has his own YouTube channel, so definitely check that out. It's called MasterTalk. And I want to introduce to the neighborhood my good buddy, Mr. Brenden Kumarasamy. What's going on, my man?
What's going on, Jay, man?
Man, that's what's up, man. So, where should we start, man? Where should we start? I think one of the biggest things, as I was kind of reviewing your profile and preparing for today, I thought it'd be good to start out with just telling us a little bit about yourself and really just how you developed this passion for communicating.
Yeah, for sure, brother. Great way to start. Thanks again. So yeah, born and raised in a city called Montreal. For those who don't know, Montreal is a city in Canada where you need to know how to speak French as a
Wow,
language.
wow.
Yeah, it's quite the city. So when I was 5 years old, I guess that's where the story begins to this whole
Mm-hmm.
life. My parents looked at me one day, Jay, and they were like, "Hey, you need to know how to speak French, Brenden." So they sent me to French school, except one problem. I didn't know the language.
Yeah.
So my whole life, not only was I scared of presentations, I had to present in a language I didn't even know.
Wow.
So to say that I struggled with communication is definitely an understatement. You could see me in
Mm-hmm.
like the crowd of like first graders or second graders, and I look at them and go, bonjour. So yeah, my life definitely didn't start as a confident communicator slash presenter for sure.
Wow. So growing up in Montreal, I guess one thing that I would ask, because I definitely have a big affinity for traveling, and Montreal is definitely one of those areas that I wanted to visit. So learning French as well as just kind of embracing the culture, how was that, going through those motions, man?
Oh yeah, man. I mean, it's interesting. I definitely struggled, especially like kindergarten, first grade. Obviously, I'm much older
Mhm.
than that now, but back then it was really challenging, Jay,
Mhm.
because when I went to French school, I since I didn't know the language, I literally had a cast on because my left hand was operated on,
Ah,
and I couldn't make any friends because nobody knew. I didn't. Nobody knew English,
yeah,
which is the
yeah.
language I spoke. So it was definitely very lonely at the beginning. But
Uh-huh.
luckily, because I live in Canada, all the kids were nice. So over time, what ended up happening is, and what's cool about the generation we all live in, especially Montreal, very
Mhm.
multicultural. So
Yeah,
lots of
yeah,
different diversities,
definitely.
lots of different languages. So it was super
Mhm.
awesome growing up as a kid in Montreal. Not much bullying, a little bit, but not too much.
Not too much. Not too much. So as you was growing up in Montreal learning French, was it pretty much at that moment you started becoming more and more comfortable as learning French? And
Got
I'm
it. So my parents, so I got lucky, Jay, in the sense that I
yeah.
was born in Montreal, but I still had to learn French because my family didn't really know how to speak the language. But my
Uh-huh.
parents immigrated from Sri Lanka in the early 90s. So they
Okay.
came here. You know, my mom took a flight at the age 30 with like never for the first time ever, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So we grew up with that type of background. But for me, you know, definitely French was not intuitive. I had to learn as I go. And I honestly failed French my whole
Yeah.
life until probably grade 7, until I really started taking my academics seriously. So yeah, wasn't really
Wow.
good at it. Even when I
Yeah.
was 15 years old or 12 years old, I still couldn't figure it out.
Yeah. So as you was getting comfortable more and more with French and really buckling down, I guess in your studies, when did you start really kind of, have gravitating to communication and maybe public speaking? Was there anything you did during those early elementary days that really had you kind of I guess the passion was getting drummed up, little bit because of different things that you was exposed to?
Yeah, for sure, brother. Great question. So basically, what happened was when I got to, unfortunately for me, it
Yeah.
wasn't the elementary days; it was the university days. When I got to uni, this is probably when I was 19. I went to business school. I did
Okay.
these things called case competitions. So think of it like professional sports, but for nerds.
Yeah.
So while other guys my age are playing, there's not really no other way to explain. Well, other guys my age play basketball or rugby or footy or something else. You could think of me like the Michael Jordan that nobody gives a shit about. So while
Uh-huh.
MJ is out there hustling his team members and going, "Hey, let's get the party going," I
Yeah.
did the same thing, but in case competitions, which were presentations competitively. So I
Mm.
was yelling at people, getting them to do the job, but in a sport that nobody cares about. That's why I like to call
Yeah.
myself the Michael Jordan that nobody gives a shit about. But anyways, that's how I learned how to speak, Jay. And
Yeah.
then what happened is as I got older, I started doing well in these competitions. I started coaching people who are younger than me, not really for money or anything. We just didn't have a
Yeah.
coach. And I was the
Mhm.
only guy there. So I just said, I guess it's me. So I started helping them. And that's what gave me the idea for Master Talk later in my career.
And how long you been doing that with the Master Talk?
Yeah, so I've been coach. So I'm currently 25. I started coaching when I was 19, and I started Master Talk specifically when I was 22. Yeah, I
Mhm.
know, weird, right? I started coaching CEOs when I was 22, so it's quite the experience, man. But basically, what happened is think of case competitions like the NBA of presentations. So the
Mhm.
reason why a lot of people do these things is to get
Uh-huh.
jobs on Wall Street, is get jobs at the top companies in the world, and
Yes.
executives come to these things. So these things were intense. It wasn't like,
Mhm.
oh, Jay, you're doing a great job. It's like, Jay, if you don't show up with the feedback that I asked you to do yesterday, don't even
Yeah.
bother coming to the meeting. So it's a
Yeah.
whole other level of intensity that we didn't really have that allowed me to adopt to the person I am today. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, good. As my son just came in to introduce us, or in this case to interrupt us a little bit. So I guess my question with that, as you was learning these reps in your university days, what certain things that was pretty much you saw maybe gaps in individuals as they were learning and really looking to enhance their communication skills? Like, what's some of the basic gaps that you see as individuals really want to enhance their communication skills?
Yeah, absolutely, brother. So let's break that down to three areas. So the
Uh-huh.
first piece to start with is, why does the fear of communication even exist? Why aren't we that
Yeah.
great at speaking? Because that breaks down a lot of the issues that happens later in life at
Mm,
university and then in life. So there's three things. The first component is, I mean, actually, before we can get to the three components, let's ask ourselves a simple question.
yeah.
Where do we give most of our presentations? Okay.
Where do we get most of our presentation? I think we
Yeah.
get most of them are just. Oh, was that a question for me or?
Go for it. Go
Okay.
for it.
I guess when I think about what do we get
Mm.
most of our presentations from? I think we get it one through our, I think, how can I put this? Subconsciously through our culture, either from our mom and dad, how they present or how they communicated, themselves to ourselves, or to the family, right? I think another one may come in, as far as we have learned through, secondary school and so on and so on. So it's kind of just replicating those things there.
Absolutely, right? And you're spot on in all those points, especially the point around school. Like think about your son, right? That's where he's
Mhm.
going to learn his presentation. Obviously, he's lucky to have a dad like you, but most of the time they won't have a personal growth superstar dad, so they'll just go through the normal education system.
Uh-huh.
But in those presentations, there's three key problems, Jay. So let's explore them. Number
Yeah.
one is every presentation your son's going to give in the education system is mandatory.
Mhm.
Okay, it's never, hey, Jay, you want to get breakfast and present all day? Nobody says that. Nobody does
Right.
that. It's
Right.
like,
Right.
hey, Jay, I need you to get a presentation on X, Y, or Z and like just do it. So you
Mhm.
never really get a choice. So that's the first piece. The second piece is your presentations are always switching all the time. So it's
Mhm.
never one presentation that you go deep on. It's always presentation history, math, sciences, gym, French, English, Spanish. And then it's like you're always doing a bunch of presentations. So you never
Mhm.
really have time to get better in any of them. And then the other piece to that as well is that you don't really get to pick the subject.
Yeah.
So it's never, hey Jay, what do you like to do? You like happyhood, you like personal growth, you like books, you want to give a presentation about books? Like, no, you don't get to choose. It's like, hey, you got to talk about the Renaissance. And then you're like, dude, I don't want to do the
I
Renaissance.
went to
You're like, what's that all about? Like, who's Shakespeare? What are we shaking here? Are we doing milkshakes? I don't understand. So there's a lot of confusion there. But the third piece, which is the most important one, Jay, is
Mhm.
that every presentation is tied to a punishment.
Mm.
So it's never, okay, Jay and Jay's son are going to give this presentation together. Father and son, we're all going to clap for them. And it's all going to be this magical experience. And I'm going to give you a
Yeah.
bunch of
Yeah.
cookies. Like, no, it's, by the way, this is 30% of your grade. And if you don't do a good job, yeah, your life is over. But it's okay. Good luck.
Mm. Mm.
Not the
Mm.
best place to learn, right?
Yeah, definitely. So it's almost out of a little bit of fear, a little bit because we're not, I guess, in essence, gravitating to communicating in a very passionate way, or as in our case, far as gravitating to it based on our interests of being in front of people and talking and being, open, throughout our conversation.
Absolutely.
Where that's good. I guess with that understanding, and when you think about far as maybe some tips, because I have a lot of things that are, as I was thinking about preparing for the interview, that I wanted to ask you, and seeing on your Master Talk. And again, Happy Family, definitely go check out Brenden Master Talk. Definitely subscribe to his YouTube channel. Some wonderful, wonderful tips. And I think, again, as we talk about finish what you start, this is some really great how-tos, right? How to, because again, public speaking, I think Warren Buffett said it best: you will always have a job. Public speakers will always have a job because there's a key or an importance around communicating, you know, and communicating and conveying a vision and communicating change and communicating, having crucial conversation, which there's a book on crucial conversation, in
Right.
which I would love to hear your thoughts on your favorite authors and everything like that. But when you think about your coaching, right, and you think about those three things that you mentioned, where we're uncomfortable, where we're being punished, right, of doing these things, or when we're forced to communicate on something that we don't have an interest for, right? How do you make communication fun? You know, how do you make it fun?
Mm, beautiful question. So that actually segues in perfectly to the first tip, which
Okay,
is just a question. And
yeah.
the question is, how would the world change? How would your life change if you were an exceptional communicator? And
Mhm.
this is a question I urge everyone to reflect on. The main problem with communication, Jay, to your point, because you're spot on there, is it's not fun. We
Yeah,
see it like a chore. Every
yeah,
person who did in our life is mandatory. It's tied to a punishment, and we never get to pick the topic. Not the funnest thing in the world. It's like if I don't know, I'm just using basketball as an example here.
sure,
But let's
sure.
say let's say you play basketball every single day, but instead of you just having fun with your friends, I start hitting you on the head every time you miss a basket. Would you like basketball? Like, you wouldn't. Like, you'd be like, geez, stop hitting you on the head. I don't play this game. This game sucks. So
Hmm.
same thing with presentations is that our children are just being hit on the head, and that's what gravitates. So the first step is to remove that anxiety. Start to dream about your communication. We dream
Yeah.
about our vacations. We dream about the cars we want to buy, the Nintendos we want to get, the big fancy houses. When was the last
Mhm.
time we dreamed about our communication skills?
Wow.
When was the last time we dreamed about a life where communication makes our life better, and it makes all of our lives better? Whether
Mhm.
you're interested in making more money at your job, whether it's a better relationship with your family, whether it's talking to strangers you've never met before, communication is not just about getting the money or getting the stage or getting the opportunity or amplifying your message. It's
Mhm.
about having a fulfilled life. And for all of us, that message, that reason for why we want to be a great communicators is different. So the number one thing I recommend before we even get to the tips is to find yours.
Message. Come on, find yours. Find yours. That fits so well when you think about far as purpose living and finish what you start. Find yours. When you think about far as, hey, I have found mine. This is, my purpose, right? Because I feel, as you mentioned, as you find yours, and I feel like as you find your voice, right? I think one of the biggest things I had to overcome in my communication is mimicking other communicators and really trying to find my voice in the way that I communicate, right? Because I do a lot at times communicating with my hands, you know. I don't know if it's more or less just helps me to articulate better. And that's one way, right? Or I have found way as I'm kind of adding humor to my communication that kind of helps and ease the tension at times. So I wonder as you bless you as you think about, or as you have help others find yours, as you mentioned, find your voice. What certain things should you do to help you find yours? While you already have the passion, or the interest, I should say, to communicate, right? Or the interest to communicate this particular topic. We'll say that. But how do you continue to develop your voice in communicating your passion, or your purpose?
Absolutely. So the way I think about this, brother, is ideas evolve over time. But the worst thing that you can do is not take any action at all. I'll give you a
Mhm.
great example. Let's say somebody like Gary Vaynerchuk, right? That I'm sure you're
Yeah.
familiar with. When he started his speaking career in 2010, for lack of a better words here, he was shit. Like
Hmm.
terrible. He's a terrible speaker. He was just like really overweight. He was always yelling at people over all the time. And now, if you look at him in 2020, obviously he's still doing that. But the difference is on a stage, he's a lot more poised.
Okay.
Like he doesn't just go bam, bam, bam. He goes, "How will posting 5 TikToks change your life?" Think about it, right? Like it's different. He's much more composed. So what's the lesson here? The lesson is finding your voice is a crock. There's no silver bullet to this game. I'll give you
Yeah.
an example with me. I sucked on YouTube when I started making videos. That was terrible. Like go watch. Like it's not like me like trying to dissuade people. Like go watch the first video. You'll see. Right? Another
Hmm.
example, same thing. Marcus Brownlee from YouTube. He's got like 12 million
Oh
subscribers
yeah.
now at this point.
Really
Go
good guy.
watch his yeah, exactly. Go watch his first video. He's some
Mhm.
15-year-old kid in his mom's basement. Like he looks like he's playing with toys, and you're just like, what the heck is this guy? So the point is quantity, Gary's quote is resonating here with me. Quantity leads to quality, but I would add quantity leads to the voice that is authentic to you. You don't really find that right away. But one thing I can do, like, it's not a full silver bullet, but it's a half silver bullet that you can
Sure.
do is
Sure.
something I teach called communication goal setting. So essentially, what you do is you
Okay.
pick 3 speakers that you want to emulate. So 1, 2, 3. I'll give you mine as an example here because it's a bit
Hmm.
complicated. But since you asked, I want to give you the best possible answer.
Sure.
So for me, my 3 speakers are Gary V, Scott Harrison, and Seth Godin. These are the 3 people I want to emulate. So what you
Hmm.
want to do is you want to pick 3 speakers for you. It could be your mom, it could be a celebrity, it could be somebody, thought leader, politician, stand-up comedian. And then
Hmm.
after you have those 3 pictures, you have a box underneath with a strength that you admire about them. So for example, one of the strengths I admire about Gary Vee's speaking style is he's world class at what I call relatability. So he's really good at relating to anybody, whether it's a 7-year-old girl who wants to get a photo with him because she saw him on TikTok, or whether it's a top CEO at Campbell's Soup who's doing a deal with him at Vayner. he is
Mhm.
able to relate to all of those people equally, which is super fascinating to me.
Mhm.
And then the
Mhm.
other piece is add another box and write down a weakness. If you had
Mm.
to give him a feedback, what would you give them? And that gives you an idea, gives you more information about what you like about that person, what you don't. But if you do that with enough speakers, Jay, most people won't do it. But let's say you do it with enough speakers, you'll eventually find your style, which is for me, I like a little bit aggressive like Gary Vee, but I also like to tone it down too. So
Yeah.
I hope that
Yeah.
helps. Does that make sense?
No, that makes perfect sense, man, because I think one thing about Gary Vee, and I'll throw Brene Brown into that mix as you talked about far as being relatable, because that's one thing that really, and I think I mean everyone, especially if you're in the podcasting and those type of space, you definitely have seen Gary Vee, and he has that ability to be captivating, as well as able to really to your point, be relatable, is able to really pick up on the different cues with that individual to see how he wants to convey his message. And Brene Brown, I think her relatability is around her authenticity. You know, she's able to be very authentic, talking about vulnerability and a lot of other hosts of things, and really just makes it a lot more relatable, when you think about it, right? So, as you mentioned, relatability, how they're being related, as well as the weaknesses, and I like the point as you mentioned, like their weaknesses in their communication, because there's no such thing as a perfect communicator. Is that right?
Exactly. You're on the money again, Jay. Absolutely. So the reason why we add those weaknesses is not to humiliate the speaker. I'm a big fan of Gary Vee and Brene and
Yeah.
everyone. It's
Yeah.
to humanize them. To
Yes.
humanize them. Because if we put people we admire, like every author on your bookshelf, we put them on a pedestal, we'll never
Hmm.
get there.
Yeah.
Right? We need to humanize those speakers, right? In the
Mm.
same way we do that with me as you're listening to the show. What do you not like about my communication style? And that way
Mhm.
you're humanizing me too. So that way you feel that I'm a human being, which I am, by the way, spoiler alert, so that you can actually say, oh, well, because there's a big difference between saying, Gary Vee's a god, Gary Vee's amazing, oh
Mhm.
my god, or Tony Robbins, put anyone there, oh
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
god, versus
Yeah.
going, he's a human being just like me. What can I learn from this person so I can become this person in a few
Mm.
years? That's a completely different. I call this wow versus how. Most people, when they meet their celebrity, the Justin Biebers of the world, the Drakes of the world, anybody, they go, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. They just go, wow, 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 wow. But they
Yeah.
don't spend enough time going, how? How did
Yeah.
this person get there? What
Yeah.
challenges did they have to go through? What struggles did they have to? What obstacles did they face? Like seeing somebody like me clean on a podcast, right? Like I'm shooting out the answers, but people don't know I've been on 600 podcasts. Like,
Yeah.
like the people don't see that. They just go, "Oh,
That's
Brenden just
yeah.
appeared out of nowhere. He just came here and he gave all of his answers. He's able to play off the dude's son and like create conversation." That shit ain't magic, bro. That shit is 600 reps and 400 crap shows that I completely messed up on.
That's some good stuff, man. That's when, again, as you mentioned, and again, Happy Family, you are listening to Happy Hill the podcast, our series on Finish What You Start. Our special guest, Brenden from MasterTalk, is discussing some really great how-to. So I hope you got your pen and paper. I'm kind of writing down some notes as he providing some tips on really enhancing your communication style. So, Brenden, as you talk about quick tips, right? Of again finding your voice, and eventually what you start is, again, it's about completing what I believe God has called you to do. Okay, is really going after those things, having the ambition, having the drive to finish what you start, right? So you're finding your voice, and you continue to have reps to improve your communication style. Let's kind of take it back a little bit for those where, and again, I'm gonna speak to my introverts, that I just don't like communicating in audience, in big places, right? Or with 100 people, 200 people. I like to be in more an intimate setting. And what would you say, or what certain things you would do to help the individual to become more comfortable? I think one of your master talks, again, and I'm gonna say again, Happy Family, go subscribe to the Master Talk. This is truly some good information. You talked about breathing, and you talked about, far as in one of your videos, was on how you can pause for a moment to allow you to, one, collect your thoughts, and also to allow the audience to maybe digest what you had just said. The key to pausing. So I want you to kind of talk a little bit, about some certain things that we can all overcome if we're getting stage fright, and we want to improve. But two, those really specific techniques around breathing. I think breathing is one of the most important ones that I'm still trying to incorporate in my communication. So I wonder if you can talk about those two things there.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's build on that. So
Yeah.
the piece on breathing and introverts. So let's start with introverts, because introverts will be interesting. So I have actually a flip perspective on this, which
Okay.
is fascinating. Which, I mean, it might not be fascinating, but let's figure it out as we go. Is I actually think introverts are better speakers than extroverts, which is weird. So let me explain why. So I have a video on
I'll agree
YouTube
with
called the three key. Yeah, I know, it's interesting. So the three reasons why introverts are actually exceptional communicators. Let's go into them. So the first one, that's how I break the. You asked me how I coach them. This is how I break them, by understanding that, hey, you're actually better. And they go like, what? And it messes them up. Anyway, so in a good way. So the first one is that introverts are way better at listening than extroverts are. Take it from an extrovert. I'm guilty. Like I'm an extrovert. I'm literally hitting up 2 conferences next week in 1 week. Okay, like I'm nuts. Okay, I'm an extrovert. I love people. That's why I'm in the coaching business, right?
Uh,
So the key is. Introverts are way better at listening because they spend less time on average talking. So they spend more time on average listening, which means they can adapt their presentation much better than an extrovert can. I'm always yapping my mouth all the time. That's why I like being on podcasts. I like being the star. I like being the guest. But I'm not listening enough to like, hey, what does Jay want? What's important to Jay? And that's the first key difference. Introverts beat extroverts every day of the week when it comes to engaging and adapting their message to their audience. That's the first key difference. The second, which ties into a point you brought up, is they're way better at pausing than an extrovert is. So let's say we're at, I don't know, like a bar without drinks. So let's say some cocktail event. I don't know. I just like that. I just like that atmosphere. So let's say we're there, and there's an introvert. Okay, so the introvert is going to spend a lot less time talking once again, right? Whereas the extrovert, if there's an awkward pause in the middle, they'll always want to fill it. They'll always want to go, so what did you do yesterday? So they're always trying to fill the pause. So whenever I try and teach extroverts pausing, including me, when I started speaking, it was so tough because when you pause for longer than 3 seconds, it like fries the brain of an extrovert. Like, it's crazy. Like, guilty as charged. I know this. Like, I can't speak to the introvert because I can talk from my client's perspective, but definitely extrovert. Yeah, my brain's fried after 3 seconds. But for an introvert, easy. Like, they master pausing like this. It takes like 10 minutes because they're so used to it. So when I try and make them uncomfortable to pause for 10 seconds, they just go, yeah, this is easy. I mean, I do it all the time when I listen, right? So it's super easy for them to master the pause. Third key difference that a lot of people think about is that introverts are a lot less polarizing than an extrovert speaker is. Let's use the 2 speakers that we've talked about today. Gary Vaynerchuk and Brene Brown. So Gary V, I'm a big fan. Okay, this is full respect for the guy. But you either like him or you don't. There's no in between.
No in between. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You either go like, wow, this guy's amazing, which is probably our case, or other people go, I don't like this guy. I don't like his message. But nobody, Jay, says, I hate Brene Brown. Just saying it is illegal. You can't say it. Just saying that will get me in jail.
Like, how could you say that?
Yeah, like just putting that out there and publicly will get me canceled. Like, and that's the advantage of being an introverted speaker. It's Susan Cain, Brene Brown, Seth Godin. No one's telling the world that they hate these people, and that's the point. So yes, introverts are better than extroverts.
Yeah, yeah. I think definitely. I would say, and I definitely will clap for that. Because my life, I guess I'm a more of a social introvert. When you put me in a social scene, I don't mind talking with people. I wouldn't say that I'm on the extreme as far as being an extrovert. But my wife, she has mentioned that, hey, she's an introvert. We have joke about it and everything, especially when you see these different not podcasts, but Instagram memes and everything about introverts and falling down, after they get out of meeting, just being fully exhausted. But I think she speaks so well. She speaks so well. I've seen her speak in her business meetings, and I'm always impressed because she said, "Oh, I don't know how I'm going to do this," and she always does a wonderful job. And one thing that I have learned from her is writing down my points. You know, because one thing that I don't know if my mind is racing, or if it's more or less just the learning my pace as I speak. Like there's a certain pace when I think about the Brene Browns, and even I'll throw in Barack Obama, right? And again, he's the president, so I'm pretty sure I don't know if he took any communication lessons or any, we can probably assume that, but he has a wonderful pace with his speaking, right? He has a wonderful pace. And I know individuals that, have that pace when they're speak. And my wife, again, learning from her, she's able to have the pace, but also she's able to have her notes where here's the three things I want to point out. And when I have done that, Brenden, my presentations, whether I am presenting something or whether I am in a debate, or in this case maybe I'm strategizing at work or whatever I'm doing, I'm able to have a more impact, I would say, with my audience when I'm able to, one, have a certain pace with my communication, as well as writing things down. And I would love to get your perspective on writing things down. Is it helpful, or is there any certain tricks or trade you should do as you prepare either for a presentation and you're having notes, right? Because I don't want to be very robotic, but I definitely want to have a certain flow and cadence with my speaking.
Yeah, absolutely, brother. So there's two parts to that question. The first part is how do we practice flow in general? And then the other
Yeah.
part is how do we practice presentations in general? So let's
Yeah.
do flow. So and then presentation. So flow is super simple. All you
Mhm.
have to do, kind of like going to the gym every day for 15 minutes and doing a workout or a run or a jog, same thing, is you want to do what I call the random word exercise. You pick one random word like happy, another word like hood, another word like book, another like necklace, and you create presentations out of thin air. So this forces you to actually just present really well because you have no preparation, right?
Mhm.
And that's really how you get really good at this skill. So that's one piece. That's how you master flow. So I've done this exercise like 3,000 times. That's the reason why my vocals, the way that I speak is
Mhm.
flowing, really soothing, or at least straight. So that's one piece. The other piece is how do we practice presentations of more effectively? This is a strategy I call the puzzle method that I teach clients that I'm happy to
Mhm.
share here. So presentations is like a jigsaw puzzle. Do you do puzzles with your son
Yeah.
randomly?
Mhm.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So this is going to be super fun for you. So let me ask you a super easy question. So it's not a trick question. So let's say you're working on this puzzle with your son. Doesn't matter how many pieces are.
Mhm.
Which pieces do you guys start with first and why?
We'll definitely start with the pieces that's kind of creating the border, as far as the outer piece, right? We already know based on the color of this is going to be one of the borders, right, of the frame. So creating the frame first and then kind of adding in those middle pieces.
Absolutely. And if I had the soundboard, I would click it and give you a hey hey.
Message.
There you go.
There you go. Correct. Absolutely, right? And to add some more layer on that, they're also super easy to find in the box because they got that edge to them, right? And then
Exactly.
you find them and then you put them, work your way into the middle. But here's the punchline, Jay. We don't do this in public speaking. In fact, we do the opposite. We shove a bunch
Mm.
of content. We start with the middle pieces first. Lots of confusion. We're just like bam, 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 slide, 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 slide. We get to the presentation and it sounds something like this. You ramble throughout the whole thing. And then the last slide, you go, thanks. That's pretty much how most of us do presentations. Wrong answer.
Mm.
Instead, what you want to do is practice presentations like a jigsaw puzzle. Start with the edges first. Practice your introduction 50 times right? Like, look at your introduction on this podcast, dude. It was epic, man. I've been on a lot of shows. Your intro was epic.
Message.
right?
Thank you. Thank you.
There you go. So that's epic. Because so it's obvious that in the way that you delivered it, that's not some like half thing that you're just sleeping, you woke up and you gave an intro. No, that was
Mhm.
clearly worked on in a good way. You spent time, you prepped it. You're like, how do I make sure I show that to my guest? Same thing with the conclusion, right? 50 times the close. But we want to apply that same logic that you did with podcasts to presentations as well.
Mm.
Practice the introduction 50 times, practice the conclusion 50 times. What's a great movie with a terrible ending? Last time I checked, terrible movie. And then tackle the middle. And the way that flow comes, all of this, for me, the big word here, Jay, is momentum, momentum, momentum. If you
Mhm.
do your introduction 50 times, your momentum skyrockets because you go, wow, my introduction's so dope. This is going to be amazing.
Mhm.
But if you just practice the whole thing over and over and over again, and let's say the presentation's 30 minutes, you're going to look at this and go, my God, I'm going to go get lunch. This sucks. And you see incremental improvement. And that's the difference.
Man, that is some great stuff. Start with the edges, the intros, and the conclusion. And you're right, those that have the great intro, the movies that is, and as well as the conclusion, you definitely remember them. You definitely remember them. I have one other question that I want you to that I wanted to ask you, and that is, and again, we're talking about finish what you start. This is Happy Hit the Podcast again, Happy Family. Thank you for tuning in. And what happens, or what do you do when things just go off? You get derailed. Things just like, I'm not doing well. I am, my notes are all over the place, or I feel like I am not being effective, right? At this time. How do you get back on track? Or what are some tips that will help us to get back on track when things are just not working? Whether it's we feel like we're not connecting with the audience, or we're in an interview, and we may be stumbling over our words, or we are in a crucial conversation and we just like maybe things just doesn't we're not conveying, or we're not having a hard time articulating our feelings, right? In those moments, and I know there may be different tips for each of those situations, but what overall would you say to an individual to help them get back on track, or what should you do to get back on track if you feel like you're not being effective with your communication?
Absolutely. And that's the way I thought of the question too. So we're definitely on the same page, brother.
Mhm.
So here's an easy way to think about this. Simplicity is key. And that's the problem with communication in general, is it's super vague. Right. And
Mhm.
that's why I created MasterTalk all those years ago, is I wanted to try and create that practical idea. Like, notice how everything I've shared today is not some like woo-woo magic. It's like, no, it's
Mhm.
like, okay, random
Yep.
word exercise, pick a random word. Like, it's practical, it's effective. So
Mhm.
how does this apply to analogy? This is what I tell people. Communication is like juggling 18 balls at the same time, Jay. Okay. One of those balls is body language. One of those balls is eye contact. Another one of those balls is probably putting some lip balm on my lips. Another one of those balls is vocal tone variety. Another one is having the right setup, dressing up, on and on and on. Pace, I could go on forever. Storytelling.
Mhm.
So the trick, to your point, is to never lose track, is to make the right decisions. What do I mean?
Mm.
If you try and juggle all 18 balls at the same time you're juggling, what's going to happen? All the balls are going to fall down, and you're
Yeah.
just going to be like, well, I can't juggle 18 balls. I guess I might as well just not juggle.
Mhm.
Wrong attempt, right? Instead, what you want to say is, wait a second, if I want to juggle 18 balls at the same time, I should probably start with one.
Yeah.
So the trick is, pick a ball up and try and throw it in the air and catch it. And if you can't catch it, it's not a big deal. It's only one ball. Pick it up again, throw it up. So what does that look like in communication to make this easy? To bring the
Mhm.
analogy back to what we're talking about.
Yeah.
It's the
Yeah.
random word exercise.
Okay.
Literally, Jay, this is what I always find funny from like hundreds of these things. Is like, I tell people about the random word exercise. It's obvious. It's easy. Like, I demonstrate half the times, like pistachios, you do it. That's it. It's just people don't do it.
Mhm.
Like, it's not like people are looking for the secret formula. They're going, what is Brenden going to show? What's a 7-step process? And there's only one step. It's do the random word exercise more than most people on the show who are listening will do, which is once, which is 10 times, which is 20 times. It's not like some. We always try to complicate things that are simple, right?
Mhm.
So that's the idea. That's the first ball. You do that 100 times, you're ready for the second ball. But until you do that 100 times, you're not ready. And then people will immediately reply, Jay, in this moment. They're probably thinking right now, oh, but what's the framework? What's the thought process? What is the 3-step process and how to do the random word exercise? This is what I always tell my clients, and I'll tell all of you. And the response is always, you do not get rewarded on how well you do the exercise. You get rewarded on how many times you do the exercise. Let me repeat that again. You do not get rewarded on how well you do the exercise. If you do the exercise well the first time, great, I'll be happy for you. But if you don't, that's not what I'm scoring. That's not what's on the scoreboard.
Yeah.
What I'm scoring is not how many baskets go in the hoop. I'm scoring how many times you're throwing the ball. That's the key. Right? And most people's problem is not that they're not doing it well enough. Most people's problem is they're not trying to shoot the ball. So shoot the ball.
Message. Shoot the ball. Shoot the ball. I believe a good quote that, you will miss every shot that you don't take.
Wayne Gretzky, exactly.
Yeah. You will miss every shot that you don't take. So shoot the ball. Shoot the ball. Finish what you start. Finish what you start and practice. Brenden, what as we close, what certain things are any upcoming things that you want to mention to the neighborhood? We know you got the YouTube channel, and again, Hapi Family. It will be in the link on our YouTube page. Definitely continue to subscribe and like our YouTube page at Happy Hood. I will have the link to Brenden's YouTube page, MasterTalk. But what's next? Anything that viewers can be on the lookout for, or anything that is coming up that you definitely want to highlight?
Yeah, for sure, Jay. Such a pleasure, man. Great conversation. So yes, the YouTube is definitely one way. And the other piece as well, for those of you who are interested in coaching or any of that thing, I do a free training over Zoom every few weeks on effective communication. So this is like a live Zoom call. People can join it. I'm coaching people for free on that call. It's a lot of fun. It's super dynamic. And the way that you register for that is rockstarcommunicator.com.
rockstarcommunicator.com.
That's it.
And we're going to leave with this question here. And I always end the show when we're talking about finish what you start with this question. And then, Brenden, I want you to define to me, what does it mean for you to finish what you start?
When I was thinking about the theme of your podcast, Jay, there's a quote that comes to mind, and it ties in nicely to your question. When I think about finish what you start, I don't think about a task. I think about the time that we have on Earth, right? Our life. And there's a great quote by Scott Harrison that will always stick by me. Scott Harrison's the CEO of Charity Water. People should definitely check out his book, Thirst. It's an exceptional read. And in the book, there's a quote. And the quote reads this, my friend. He says that the goal is not to live forever, but rather create something that will. So when I think about finishing what you start, I don't think about the day-to-day. I don't think about finishing the pistachios that you were supposed to eat this morning, which I don't think I did. I don't think about the runs that I should be going, the exercise, the routines. I think about the legacy. I think about, are we going to finish the calling that is deep within us, that some of us have started, many of us haven't? And are we going to do that before the game is over? And my definition of finish what you start is to figure out what that is. What is that calling that you need to start? And be sure you finish what you start before your time runs out.
Family, that wraps up another edition of Happy Hood, the podcast. Finish what you start. I'm your favorite neighbor, Jay Murray. And always remember, you are strong and you were created for greatness. And no matter what life brings you, always love God, love self, love your neighbor. I'm your favorite neighbor, Jay Murray. Till next time, be blessed.
Finish what you start.
Message.